So we're going to get started. We're still waiting for one other person to come join us from the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. We have a short presentation up at NYC. When they get here, we'll put them on later on. We'll start quickly with the roll call for the March Borough Service Cabinet meeting. Community Board 1, Community Board 2, present. Community Board 3, here. Community Board 4, Community Board 5, Community Board 6, present. Community Board 7, Community Board 8, Community Board 9, Community Board 10, here. Community Board 11, here. Community Board 12, Community Board 13, Community Board 14, Community Board 15, Community Board 16, here. Community Board 17, Community Board 18. All right. Just a couple of quick announcements. Some of you probably know this already. On Wednesday, this coming Wednesday at 5:30 p.m., we have a special discussion with DEP for residents to come and ask questions about the DEP about water bills, noise concerns, air concerns, water concerns, et cetera, et cetera. You should have already received this information, I think, at the last meeting, but if you haven't, we can send that out to you all so you can share with your community boards. Tomorrow? That's Wednesday. So is that tomorrow? That's tomorrow. The MetroCard van is coming to Borough Hall on Wednesday, March 25th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So if you want to share that with your constituents as well, we can forward this flyer to you as well. It's coming March 25th, April 22nd, and May 27th. I'll forward this flyer on to you guys so you have it. This Thursday at 6 o'clock, we have a legislative summit with the Mitchell-Lama Task Force with members of the state legislative delegation to discuss issues of concern regarding Mitchell-Lama housing for the entire borough. And you know, we have a lot of Mitchell-Lama housing throughout Brooklyn, so that's it should be a good discussion, especially with rent regulation laws up for renewal this year up in Albany. Lastly, or second to last, we have Women's History Month will be Monday, March 30th here at Borough Hall. We're going to have an exposition of women-owned businesses from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And at 6 p.m. we're going to have our ceremony up in the courtroom where we honor different women throughout Brooklyn for their service to the community. It's open to the public. The guest speaker is going to be Ricky Kleeman, who is Commissioner Bratton's wife. So that should be a good event as well. And on March 23rd, which is a Monday evening before, it's Greek Heritage Night here at Borough Hall, which makes me very happy because you know, those Greeks, we always got to be celebrating something. We don't have much to celebrate these days, so we'll celebrate Greek Heritage Month. So with that, anyone else have any announcements they want to share?
I don't have an announcement, but I was wondering if you were able to get in contact with Mike Jones from SLA.
I emailed him, and then I held off on following up because I wanted the outcome of this meeting first to kind of lay out the schedule before I committed to a date for him. But yeah, I did email him once you forwarded it to me. Okay. So with that, we'll move right into our agenda. We're going to hold off on the first agenda item, which is the presentation by Plan NYC, and we'll go to number 2, which is, and I think all of these agenda items kind of flow into each other, but I thought it might help us to break it out, a little bit. Follow up from our February meeting. The feedback from the February meeting was that people thought it went pretty well. Having all those speakers talk about the different initiatives, especially around information, we thought was very, very useful. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts, what other things we want to be doing around these topics. I know there was a request to have 311 come back and kind of further clarify some of the issues that were raised with the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics, and also see what other stuff we're looking to do as well. So I open it to you guys to kind of chime in and tell me what you think. You know, what else you're looking for, what else we want to flesh out further from additional speakers on this.
I think it would be an interesting discussion if we can invite, I believe it's the Mayor's Office of Operations, to have a follow-up discussion on the scorecards and how they assess street cleanliness. There was a very interesting article put out yesterday in the Gotham Gazette. And even though it was done by high school students, they did a study, children in Bushwick, on street cleanliness, and they took the actual pictures that operations uses, and they went out and they compared, and of course what they saw and what the mayor's office sees are two very different things. As we've said before, scorecards really don't reflect the reality in our communities. For example, in November, my street cleanliness was 95%. That is not what the neighbors and residents are complaining about. we wouldn't be hearing those complaints if our streets were so clean. So I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion and to see if they're going to move forward and kind of, as the city has changed and as our population has changed, if they're going to change the basis on how they're going to gauge street cleanliness.
Because that formula's been around for a long time. And unfortunately, with the scorecard, our district resources are based on those scorecard companies.
Right.
And so if we have a 95%, we're not going to get those additional MLP vehicles or
You know,
patrols.
Yes.
no, it's funny because I just had that conversation at my district service cabinet with our superintendent from the sanitation about the scoring.
Sure.
And it's done by a private company, from what they told me. But sanitation actually they don't have any idea what time of the day that they actually come out to do the scoring.
Or what streets.
Right.
Or what streets. They have no idea. And then, like, for example, if they come out early in the morning and say, like, on the commercial strips, and say the private sanitation didn't pick up the trash. That's happened to me.
Sure.
I have a restaurant, and the guy wouldn't pick up our trash sometimes. So if they happen to come out that day, obviously then they're going to say it's trash on that street because it wasn't, it wasn't picked up from the previous night. So basically they're saying they have no idea when they come out, what time they come out, what streets are they doing. And I was trying to get out of him, like, how do they how they do the scoring? And they don't know.
There's been rumors, some have said that they go on a corridor and then they use that same sampling to the other commercial corridors that are similar.
I missed the word.
They don't go every block. The
No,
mayor's
one
office,
particular
I'm
corridor.
sorry, they do a sampling. Right. So for you to say that 86th Street, for example, 86th Street has the same conditions as 18th Avenue.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, so that's
It's ridiculous.
that's what we think they're doing.
Yes,
That's what they are doing.
that's
That's
what
what
they
they
do
are
do.
doing.
I mean, just a clarifying question. The scorecards are just for street cleanliness, or are there other issues that get?
Sidewalks.
The sidewalk and street.
So, but it's just in terms of sanitation, just what's on the ground type of thing, right? That's what all the scorecard measures.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Or
And the-
how they determine what's on the
So
ground.
they've had this formula for years, and
I don't even know what the formula is. You know what the formula is?
Well, they just pick, I think, 3 or 4 random streets
Well, there's multiple streets in each sector.
Yes.
I mean, is that the subdivision?
The sector.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, sector.
And you get points.
Sections.
Sections,
Sections,
thank you.
yeah.
And there's sort of something that they compare to, right?
They have
Monitoring
pictures.
on the blue slitter, or, there's different sort of things that they check off, and you get points off based on that.
And the reason,
And I was told they go to the exact same streets every month.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's supposedly secret.
The secret, we don't know.
Right.
and the reason this is an issue for my district, because we're getting a lot of calls about wanting alternate side reduced. They're very envious of community board too. Because they'll have one day on each side. So, but in order for that to happen, the first step is your scorecard. And it has to be, I think, 90% for, I'm not sure how many quarters, 2 consecutive
2
years.
2 years.
So like, we're nowhere near that. So I have to keep explaining to them, okay, we can't even petition to start that process because our sanitation scores are so low. The next question is, who's doing the scores? What are they basing it upon? And I basically really have no answer for them.
Right. Okay, so, and then you think it's done by a private company that city contracts out to
That's
do?
what I was told. That's what my
And then that
superintendent
data,
told us.
that data then goes, all that gets sent to the mayor's office of operations, and then they create the score and they produce the reports, and then that's what everything else is based on.
Right, and
So-
I'm sorry, but one of the problems is you cannot fight for additional resources. If I was to call and say, listen, I need additional litter patrol on 86th Street, they say, morning. What are you talking about? How could I even argue that you're 95%?
Okay.
And that's not the reality.
You're the opposite for me.
Right, but I would be
We got low scores, we
happy.
still can't get additional resources. So yeah, that's
But
rough.
that's the starting point to
I think
argue.
discussion about
Yeah.
Okay.
the system, maybe recommending changes to
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Just want to take a step back, or 2 steps back first. I know we were joined by a few additional people. We have community boards 8, 9, 14, and 17. Did I miss anyone? We're all good? And you said no one was coming. You see that? Always have faith, Rob. Always gotta have faith. So I just want to circle back specifically to what we had heard last month in terms of other types of data, that presentations that we thought might be helpful. Not so much on the collection point, but on the dissemination side. What other types of information it would be helpful to have made available to you guys in your offices, if any? I know
You already said what I brought you.
You want
311.
Right.
You know,
And that's
my
just, we want a generalized conversation with 311? Do we have specific concerns and issues? I mean, so we can kind of nail that down.
Well, the different agencies interface with 311 differently, and so there's different data collection methodologies. So if some complaints, you can only call it in once, and if it's called in again, the 311 operator says we already have that complaint. And other complaints you can call in, numerous times. I think noise complaints you can call in a zillion times. Potholes, I think, so you don't really know the sort of scheme behind the community's complaint. You also don't know if it's just one aggrieved resident calling in, or if you've got a wide swath of people who are concerned about the issue. So it's really just trying to glean from those numbers what they really need, and trying to understand which agencies work, which complaints are gathered in which place, so you kind of know what you're dealing with.
And also, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
A couple with what Sean is saying. Just recently in our district, we came upon a complaint about commercial vehicles parked overnight. And residents were telling me that they were calling 311 and either their complaints were immediately closed out or they weren't closed out at all. So I decided to do a little sample, and I called in 5 nights in a row, commercial vehicles that were parked overnight since February 25th, and those complaints have not yet been closed out and do not appear on open data. So that, will they ever be closed out? I mean, I don't know. What happens to complaints that are not closed? I mean, those are some good
And
questions.
you said it doesn't appear on what?
The open data portal, which is surprising. So I look at open data at key areas to see what the numbers are and complaints are in the district. And those complaints are not yet in the system, even though they were made 2 weeks ago.
So how can we trust their numbers?
Exactly.
And especially in the case that she mentioned that there are issues, you call, then someone else will call, and they're not taking that person's complaint. So if somebody's 10 calls coming in about the same complaint, but they're only marking it as one call.
Has a different protocol, and why is that? I think we have some
Okay.
questions.
So we just need complete, full clarity on the 311
Okay.
system and how they interact with the agencies.
Okay. Okay, good. And I think that'd probably be helpful to have them here when we have a full cabinet meeting. This way the other agencies can kind of respond and not just have a one-off presentation with them. Okay.
May I ask my colleagues, is anybody else going on the tour of the 311 center? Are we all?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if that will shed any light on this.
No.
When is that scheduled for?
No.
Thursday.
Thursday morning, yeah.
Yeah.
What form did this invitation come in?
Email.
You didn't get
Email.
12th anniversary.
You didn't get the email?
Tell me what you learned.
Can't be it, y'all.
Tell me what you learned, because I ain't learned.
Well, I took the tour when they, 12 years ago. I want to see what changed. That's why I'm interested in going.
No,
You didn't want to say that.
No, it's not an
I understood
opportunity
too.
to dissect them. It's a celebration.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's a celebration.
Yes.
They walk you around, they show you the room.
Yes.
That's all.
It's a waste of time.
Show you cues, so hopefully.
Okay, good to know. So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot here, the borough president, when he first came into office, wanted to create this version of CompStat called Brooklyn Stat. You may have heard him mention this before, because when he was in the police department, he was one of the people who was kind of behind the idea of CompStat. And the idea is to map the borough in any, in a myriad of different ways. And we still haven't really fleshed this out exactly what it's going to look like. But one, some of the obvious things are look at where there's the greatest need and trying to match up greatest need with resources. Look at areas of Brooklyn that have, let's say high poverty rates, and those are also areas where there's low availability of social services and things like that. Trying to connect people to services, not just city services, but other services as well, to kind of connect the dots. That's one iteration. But there's a million different ways we can kind of think about this project, and we're having discussions now with a bunch of different folks about what this project might look like. So I wanted to ask you all, what do you think, or what would be helpful to you if we were to release some type of user-friendly interface compiled from both open data sources, which is not always the easiest to navigate, as well as some other sources as well? What would be helpful to you? What types of analysis or analytics or visualizations do you think would be helpful or instructive, if any? Maybe there's none, I don't know. You know. Sean?
Can I answer that in the negative? I mean, this is right up my alley, this topic, and we did a project with Town and Ground trying to use our data. But I have a cautionary reaction to that. I think once you start mapping, but once you start counting things, you start politicizing things. I'm concerned about how you count things. We all have districts where we have our squeaky wheel residents, and then the people who really have how to know and pick up the phone and call, we don't. So trying to ensure that the data is objective and not just squeaky wheel oriented. I also am very concerned. I don't know if you said the word mapping, but I get worried about mapping in terms of what it does to set expectations. I can map that there's a pothole, but I can't control when it gets addressed. When I'm the one mapping it, then there's this accountability that I really can't live up to. So those are also the concerns we struggle with just in CD14.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's not, the intent is not so much to quantify and politicize, but you know, there's a lot of data out there, and there are a lot of people that we've come across who don't know what's available to them. You know, people don't know that they can apply for this program or that program, or you know, helping with heating costs or helping with housing issues or this or that. There's a lot of need out there, and there's already a lot of information that's available to people, both on the public side and the private side, that people don't know about, and that was the original genesis for the Borough President's idea. But you can scale this up or down in different ways, and that's kind of those are the conversations we're having now in terms of what this might ultimately look like. If anything, maybe we find that there's really no need for this, but we are engaging in those conversations. And I think you're right. You want to keep the data as objective as possible and not use it for any political ends.
One of the issues that we recently had, I think at the town hall, the conversions was that people take this data and target people who are already, and that's always a concern, especially when there are scams and ESCOs out there. That if there's too much information being given, there's an opportunity for people to be targeted for those needs on that.
Okay.
And you should just
Be aware of that.
And maybe send out information on potential scammers. I mean, we get all kinds of get warmer on the electrical side of the ESCOs and so just something to think about.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. We'll come back once we have it fleshed out more, and we'll obviously involve you guys in more conversations about that. Before we move on to the next conversation topic, which is Link NYC, I know we're joined by the other folks here from the Office of Sustainability, so I'm going to have them come on. They have a short presentation they want to do on Plan NYC, and then we can resume our conversation. So, Ibrahim, you're up.
Morning.
I did have a presentation, but I also can just have a conversation if you guys don't mind. What would you prefer?
Well, let's talk.
Let's talk, exactly. Okay, so the gist of why I'm here, I mean, how many of you folks remember Plan YC when we did it in the last iterations? Great. And so at the time I worked in the Mayor's Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, and I worked on the outreach plan. I actually worked with Andrew here closely when he was at Citizens Committee. And we actually created a really good grant-making program for local residents that were doing some of the greening efforts in their local community. So, and I'm a member of Community Board too. I'm a resident. I feel like a member by osmosis.
You missed the deadline.
I know. My wife said no, I can't do it, by the way. I think I try and join a lot of different things, and then I get in trouble. I live up the street. I'm from Brooklyn. I just want to give that context. So what I'm here to have a conversation about is, what do you remember when we talked about Plan YC last time? What comes up to your mind when you hear Plan YC? What's that?
I said, I remember mostly about parks.
Parks, okay, great. What else does? Building greener, great. Other main thoughts, Plan YC?
Just a future look of how New York City was going, or how we want New York City to
Great.
look.
You guys
in the
are spot on.
Next 20 to 30 years, I think it was like a 30-year plan.
I love it. This is great. Sustainability, nice. All right, great. Boom. So the core of it is around how does New York City grow in a sustainable way? How do we combat climate change? And how can we be a more resilient city? The layer that's been added in this iteration of the plan is around layering equity into that conversation. So and that's what this administration's push is around, looking at the entire, all of those elements and looking at the built environment and within the context of equity. So it's really, if you think back, and this is the thinking big piece, this is the part that always resonates with me, is if you think back to, the things that make me inspired. In 1850s, I think we had our cholera deaths in New York City were in like the thousands, 3,000 to 5,000. I forget the exact number. But after they started building the water reservoirs upstate and transporting the water, gravity-fed water down to here, and cleaning up some of the streets, our cholera deaths went down to 0 within like less than a decade. They were thinking big about the future. The grid, the subway tunnels, the bridges, all those things were really thinking big about the future. They were imagining us as human beings and what we're going to do and how we're going to thrive. So the real question is, what are we doing to think big about the future? That's the conversation. Within that, the real fundamental piece around equity in a way that's never been done before. The other piece that separates this plan from the last time is that there's going to be ongoing engagement after the plan comes out on April 22nd. So where we just had sort of like a launch and a release and then, hey, this is what we were thinking. It's going to be, hey, this is what we're thinking. Now let's figure out how to work together to do that. So what I'm here basically to do is that in the next couple weeks, month, we're going to reach out to all of the community boards, and some of them we've already had conversations with, to have a series of roundtable discussions. We're going to talk to civic groups and organizations in your local neighborhoods, and we're literally going to say, what do you want, right? And I know that there's district needs statements that folks have, and that the city needs to pay attention to those. And so what we would like to do is create forums at these roundtable discussions where you can present elements of your district needs plan that fit within the context of the plan. We think about housing, we think about education this time, as well as other things that civic groups in your areas are working on that are about connecting people to infrastructure. So ideally we create a forum where the city listens and the residents speak. And that's what the goal is for these round of listening sessions. My colleague back in the back, Christina Dozier, she's, what's her actual title? You're at DHS. So she's a superhero. And her and I are going to be reaching out to one or all of you at different points in time to discuss next steps. We have an idea about how we can group some of the neighborhoods. I got some pushback from some folks about some of the groupings, but it's we're trying to basically be efficient with our use of time to try and have some of the neighborhoods come together. And really, it's really about creating space for the local organizers and organizations in your neighborhoods to get a platform to tell the city what we have missed and what we need to think about. And I feel very passionate about that. Like I'm a Brooklyn kid who grew up at African Street Festival. I'm from the sort of streets of this area. I wasn't like a tough kid. I was like a what do you call it? Like a sheltered kid that grew up in New York. And I like to think that I'm doing the same thing for my sons growing up here. And so part of my deep, sincere work with these sessions is to really create an open space where the city is in a listening mode, where we let residents tell us what they're thinking about. And even in organizing of some of these conversations, for example, we're working with Brooklyn Movement Center in Bed-Stuy to organize a roundtable discussion with some of their organizations. Even in that conversation, some things that they're working on that we didn't even know that they were working on have come out, and that has been something that aligns directly with what's in the plan. So that's the type of thing that we want to get. And so this input process We have nyc.gov/ideas. I mean, nyc.gov/ideas. You should write that link down, nyc.gov/ideas. That's an online platform and portal where we're gathering up ideas. Every single day, those ideas get fed into a report, and the people working on the different pieces of the plan are getting a report of that content. So it's nyc.gov/ideas. That is available in multiple different languages as well. So we would encourage you to put your ideas on there as well and send it out to your networks and your community groups. We feel very strongly that we should anchor the conversation in the geographical context. So we will be looking in areas. So, you know, if we're doing something with Community Board 6, we're going to make sure that groups in that area are going to be there. It's not necessarily, we're not asking you to do any extra work or like to call people. I know you guys have a lot going on. If you feel so inclined, and when we talk to you, you think that that's important, that'd be great. But I think the primary thing is that we want to create a space for you and for the organizations and leaders, importantly, and leaders in your areas to platform to tell us what to think. I'm excited about these because you're shaking your head. What's up?
Well, I remember when Plan NYC first got talked about, and there were all these like group meetings,
yep.
like what you're
yep.
talking about.
Yep.
And we're really very excited because, especially with the parks portion
yep.
of Plan NYC, and pretty much we still got the same thing we got, and like no one, like you put stuff on paper and then you put it on a shelf somewhere. I mean, what's the implementation?
There's a lot of implementation, to be honest. I hear you. What I'm saying is,
about us.
no, I totally understand, and we should talk about that specifically one-on-one and think about what are the things that were specifically promised. I think that's the purpose of the ongoing engagement for this time, and I think that hopefully, as someone who's been in the previous administration and in this current one, those are the things that I would like to figure out. How do we make it relevant for each area? So it is not just a sort of theoretical thing, but there has been a lot that's happened, and we can talk about what that has directly meant for your area. But I totally hear that frustration. I've heard it from lots of different groups and communities that the city listens, but then what happens? And respectfully, in this instance, I know that there's two things. This administration is new, and so right now their attention is peaked. Right, their attention is there. So the more ideas we get right now, the more they're going to look at those ideas. So mindful of the cynicism in the world, this particular moment is a really good moment to get those things in front of the people that are working on it. Does that make sense to everybody? Because their attention is being, frankly, their attention is going to be paid on those things. And in real talk, they're looking for new ideas. They're looking for things that might have been missed in other times. And this is a great opportunity to put those things front and center. What I can guarantee is that someone who's working on it, who's slightly obsessed and passionate about it, is going to look at what you're saying. I cannot guarantee it's going to go in the plan or it's going to get implemented, but I can guarantee that people, and I know personally, for example, there was an issue that just came up in Staten Island, and I asked the folks in Staten Island, what are the 3 things that could unite the island? Because the island has a lot of different issues. And they gave those to me, and I literally brought those ideas directly to the people working on that part of the plan. That's part of my job. My job is to make sure that the ideas get in front of people and let them understand the political will behind it and the sort of the real thing. So making sure that the people who are most affected by issues get those issues in front of the people who are working on those things.
I get the excitement of looking for the next big thing, and I get the frustration of when the next big thing doesn't happen.
For sure.
But I think one of the things that it's sort of the flip side of Pearl's coin is that you're looking for the next, new ideas, and we're not taking care of what we have now. So we're talking about, sustainability and transportation in the future, and DOT is at least sluggish in ever, responding to on the road, literally on the ground concerns and issues we have now. So we're getting new toys without taking care of the toys we have.
And that's the type of input that we need to hear, and that needs to come at a scale, right? So if that's the type of input that we're hearing, sorry about that. I have to think about that, but that's the kind of input that we need to hear a lot, right? So this is if you can think of this as an organizing opportunity where the more we hear that type of input, the more that input will be taken seriously.
Well, and I think that the confidence in what could happen will build as the confidence in what is happening now increases.
Yep.
I guess I can echo Pearl's disappointment in the last process. made a conscious decision not to get overexcited about helping to create a flashy plan, because honestly, I was more concerned with helping to create a more interactive planning process, not just a brain dump that people can then take credit for or ignore, but an ongoing, inclusive, interactive planning process that we would be involved in. And so I'm intrigued at the notion that you've already picked up on that and that you foresee some form of engagement taking place after the brain dump happens. Can you say a little bit more about what you envision that being?
We are actively asking lots of different organizations across the city to give us proposals for what that should look like. There's already some ideas internally about what that potentially could look like, and people have put forward lots of different ideas internally, so there's a lot of debate and discussion. Every time I'm having these conversations, I'm asking people, that could be, if nothing else, one of the substantive pieces of information. Like, for example, if you said, if you want to make sure that this is something that is ongoing, like, for example, we just heard from folks in Community Board 4, and not Community Board members, but groups in there that were saying, drill down the items in the plan to each zip code, or make it sort of relevant to each zip code. Well, I brought that suggestion back to folks to say, okay, what does it mean for each thing if we're going to look around these different areas? What does that mean? That's one good idea to think of, like, how that could be make it relevant to people on the local scale, and that's in the mix of one of the conversations. Ongoing regular engagement. There's all these advisory committees and like monitoring committees and task forces around the city. There's no audit of all of those things. And so we're saying all of these different things exist. For example, Newtown Creek Monitoring Committee. You have all these different things around the city. So what are the ways that we can use those mechanisms in addition to the community boards as a way to sort of link those things into a larger plan of ongoing engagement and create some sort of much more clear expectations around what those will be doing going forward, right? Because a lot of them have a certain shelf life, and it's unclear what's going to happen as the next step. So making clear what those next steps could be as part of this process. The brownfield opportunity areas are another great node where there's a lot of organizing happening, thinking about vacant and open space, and sort of how do we plan and program a neighborhood in a way that reflects the community's needs. That's another model that we're pulling from to sort of help us think through this, where they're finding federal and state money to help neighborhoods think and plan together. So that there's a couple different groups, like We Act and Hester Street Collaborative and Uprose, which are doing some local level resiliency work, specifically where they're trying to create resiliency captains. So we're trying to figure out how that model might feed into this approach, this ongoing approach. But I'm imploring the community, and in all seriousness, as much ideas about how this could be, how it can be relevant and make sense for your communities going forward. And I get it. We need to like show and prove and say what we're going to do. And as we get closer to that, to the plan's release, that's going to be a big piece of the way that the administration talks about the plan going forward, is to make sure that we're held accountable for what we say we're going to do.
Are you guys also looking at how all these wonderful things are going to get implemented when it comes to dollars?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah, the capital planning, a lot of the regional plans, a lot of different, basically a lot of the budgeting process, all this stuff is happening concurrently, and they're sort of accounting for all these different elements. New York Rising has stuff going on. There's lots of different things happening, so we're thinking about those in an integrated way. For sure. It's true. I mean, that's what's happening. You got a bunch of nerdy kids running around. And you know, what's really encouraging about this group of people working on this is that it's mostly, you know, New Yorkers. There's a lot of people that have been longtime New Yorkers that are, you know, in the trenches trying to figure this out. That are, you know, so these are people that live in the neighborhoods and that are working around and doing this stuff. So it's encouraging to me.
Are there any agencies that are put on notice now that the new Plan NYC is happening, and so, you know, hold off on doing something, or make sure you're doubling down on getting, I don't know, trenches restored, or
so we have that's funny. So we have the last iteration of the plan had 25 agencies collaborating. This iteration has 70 agencies collaborating. So one real big value of this process so far has been to break down silos within the administration. So there's been some intensive work, people breaking across, like for example, DOT, Parks, DEP, where I'm the Director of Community Affairs at DEP, so Denise Hubbard is one of my employees. So along all those education people, you're looking at me funny.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know that part, the DEP part.
Yeah, that's my other job. I'll tell you, I'll explain why. All those education people, so each of those agencies has an education person, so they're working alongside with DOE to figure out the ways that education across, and this is a conversation that's never happened before, like across all these different agencies of education people, and now they're sort of organizing their efforts in a way that it really is, I think, actually inspiring, because people have been doing work in these silos and really doing some amazing work, and now we're breaking out of it. And every week there's a regular agency meeting at City Hall where a brown bag where all the different agency staff come together and are getting briefed on what's happening with the plan. And that's just the people that are peripheral to it. The people that are working on it are in a whole other phase and process of nitty-gritty work that if you've worked at agencies, you understand some of the, if you know content really well, then you're going to be engaged on it pretty intensively.
So what are incorporated boards district needs? Are you looking at the capital expense recommendations and bringing that in?
Yes. All of that has been, it was incorporated at the very beginning. So they did a big matrix of all of those elements to really sort of start to filter through and see, based on the new goals around resiliency and equity, how those things fit together. So that was a early.
I asked that because it doesn't reflect in the responses, so I wanted to be sure that you were taking that into consideration, not just the needs, but on the capital side.
That's a good point. The people that are working on the capital planning are really getting themselves organized like no other time before. And those are people that are intimately involved in the infrastructure conversation that's shaping the infrastructure and jobs and infrastructure section of the plan. So all that is as best we can, I think, is being at least considered and part of the conversation.
Are you guys integrating the School Construction Authority and the Department of Education into this conversation? Because our schools are real.
They're deeply embedded in that conversation. Yeah, they're in a way, like last time they were not, I'll be honest, and this time they are. And they're as integral as any other agency into this process. I mean, that's, we're trying to figure out how to, the big critique from last time was that there were certain areas that we missed, right? The first time they put out, the big idea was congestion pricing, and then the big critique was that sanitation wasn't in there, food wasn't in there. The second iteration, sanitation was in there and food was in there, and now we're listening again. I think in general, like historically, there's been a decent amount of engagement. Now we're expanding the scope of the plan by including the equity piece. And so that requires us to think longer term about how to do ongoing engagement, because it's not as simple as just getting ideas from a bunch of experts on water or energy. It's actually much more fluid and ongoing, that we have to touch base with folks. Because what is the fundamental question is, what is the relationship between people and infrastructure, people in the built environment? Whereas before it was more, what is the built environment that we're going to create? What are we going to build? Now we're thinking, how do we make sure that the city grows in an equitable way and make sure that we have good paying jobs so that people can stay here and stay in their neighborhoods and stay in their communities? That's a big question that the city's trying to ask and answer, and that's really the crux of it. I mean, it's really trying to figure out how do you grow in a smart way that's sustainable and equitable. To me, it's a really exciting conversation.
Any other questions?
No, yeah. If there's any other? Cool. So look for us to bother you in short time. We'll probably be bothering you, so frankly, I apologize. But start thinking already of community organizations and in specifically in your boroughs, within your community board, if there's plans that a committee is working on specifically that the city may not know about yet. When we do these roundtables in your areas, we would love for that to be conveyed. We would love for that information to come out in a way that was, in an ideal way, you would not only present it, PowerPoint, whatever, play, whatever you want to do, you would present it in a really good way, but you would also give us something in hand. Because that stuff is going to be really powerful when we bring it back to City Hall and we feed it into the larger input process. And I will say, just from someone who's seen the different iterations, the sort of data gathering and collection process this time is much more thorough from external sources, right? So we're getting more and we're processing it in a more efficient way. It's basically like some crazy algorithm. People are sucking this information into a database, and it's getting pumped out. People are getting regular reports of stuff in a way that's really inspiring, and I think it takes advantage of the way technology is at the moment. So, thank you guys very much.
Great, thank you.
Do you have a card?
Honestly, I don't have any more. They're getting printed. So I am the director of community affairs at DEP. So that's my day job, and I was pulled into this
Where's Shane?
What's that?
Shane?
Shane is no longer in that position.
Okay.
That's my position now. He is the director of capital planning at our shop. So I oversee Denise Hubbard and other folks, and I work under Mario Bruno and Eric Landau.
Denise is a good girl.
She's excellent. She actually, this is what I say, I don't tell them how to do their job, I tell the story of how they do their job. Because they do their job really well.
What's your email address?
It's IABDULM, the letter M, at dep.nyc.gov. IABDULM at dep.nyc.gov. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.